Hello everyone, welcome back. So today I am continuing my shelf tour. I believe this is part 6. I'm not sure, I've kind of lost count. Now these are my unread fiction shelves. And the reason that I am making these videos is because I want to take everything off my shelves and look at them, see what I have, remind myself of what I have, maybe get rid of some things that I'm no longer interested in reading, maybe move to the front books that I am interested in reading. And also, I would love to hear from you if you've read these books, if you enjoyed them, if you didn't enjoy them, if you have any recommendations, I'd love to hear about it. Or even if you just have them on your shelf and you haven't gotten to them yet in the same way that I haven't gotten to them yet. So let's get right into this. And this is mostly going to be horror short stories and that sort of thing. Not entirely. It's kind of a mixed shelf where just different things wind up. So first we have an anthology edited by Christopher Golden. This is Dark Cities. These are all horror stories that take place in cities. I've read some of these and they were okay. I've read a few of them and they weren't very good at all, or I didn't think they were very good. But I really like anthologies like this. You never know what you're going to get. I think these are all new stories that went into this anthology, so they hadn't been published anywhere else. And Short Story Summer is coming up very soon in August. That's Randy Ray's event, the Literate Texan. I'm really looking forward to that event because I love short stories. And perhaps I will put this on the pile and get to reading it. Although I do have some ideas for what I'm going to do in Short Story Summer. And so I will talk about that later. Now, these next two books are probably the most literary books that I have on this pile, or just about, or this shelf rather. But they are a pile in front of me here, 3 piles in front of me. That would be books by William Kennedy in his Albany series. So we have Billy Phelan's Greatest Game and Legs. And I have read his book Ironweed. I really, really liked it. It was not the sort of book that I usually read. I have been meaning to read his other books. I've heard they're really good, but it's just a matter of finding the moment when they interest me and reading them, right? And that is really the issue that I have, is that I have a lot of interests, and I really like to be able to bounce from one interest to another on a whim. And so that is why I have so many books, for one reason, because I never know what I'm going to be interested in the moment. And I really like to have that freedom to go from very different interests in a moment's notice. So the next is by an author whose name I do not know how to pronounce, and that I have tried to learn how to pronounce. I've looked him up several times, and I never can find a video of anyone pronouncing his name, like in his presence or anything like that. But it is Let the Right One In by John Ajvide Lindqvist. And I would love, if you know how to pronounce his name properly, please tell me. I really would like to know. This is, of course, about a vampire and a boy who lives in the same building as a vampire. And I saw this movie here, the original movie. I never saw the American remake, and I really don't have any interest in watching the American remake. But I really liked the movie. I really liked the original movie, and I put this on my shelf of books that I may read this year. So I'm still intending to hopefully get to this at some point this year, or I would like to. The next is The Three Imposters and Other Creepy Stories by Arthur Machen. And I believe he was from Wales. I think he was Welsh, right? I remember that quite some time ago, Outlaw Bookseller went to the town where Arthur Machen was born, where he lived. I don't know if he lived there his whole life or what. I have read some of Arthur Machen's stories and really enjoyed them. Whereas I tried to get into this. I think that I have read the first story in this, which is called, or it's not the first story, but it was called The Shining Pyramid. And I remember enjoying that, but I need to get around to reading the rest of the stories in this. After that, we have an anthology edited by David G. Hartwell. This is Foundations of Fear. And I think that this is this the follow-up to The Dark Descent? It's here on the back, The Dark Descent. I really, really liked The Dark Descent. It's known as one of the best horror anthologies that was ever released. Whereas I just didn't get into this for some reason. There was a really long story that I read in this that didn't seem to be going anywhere at all. And so I think I just kind of burnt out on it before I really gave it a good chance. After that, we have two by Robert E. Howard. This one is illustrated by Gary Gianni. This is Bran Morn, The Last King. I've never read any of the Bran Morn stories, although I've read all the Conan stories, all the Solomon Kane stories, almost all of Robert E. Howard's horror stories. And the other is Borak and Other Desert Adventures, illustrated by Tim Bradstreet and Jim and Ruth Keegan. And I remember where I was when I found Borak. I was at a Salvation Army in Clarksville, Arkansas, where the books were extremely cheap. I mean, they were like 17 cents a piece or something. And I saw this from across the room, and I like bounced over there, like really, I like bounded across the room to grab this. And I still haven't read this, and I have had this for about 11 years now. And I have read a few stories in this. I think that at the time I had just read so much Robert E. Howard that I kind of burned out on reading more of his stories at the time. After that, we have The Cutting Room. So this is another one of those anthologies, sort of in the spirit of Dark Cities. This is The Cutting Room, and it is all about horror stories around films and Hollywood and that sort of thing. And I'm not a huge fan of reading about Hollywood or movie productions, but I really like the idea of horror stories around films, either while the film is being made, or maybe when they find this film, or kind of like The Ring, or was it The Ring? I can't remember. I read that book. It's been a long time. But cursed videotapes and that sort of thing, cursed movies. And like I said, short story summer is coming up. I have so many short stories though, so many short stories that I could probably read most of them in August, but it would be like, I would have to cut everything else out and probably read for like 4 hours a day. Now this one I have read most of. This is Blackwater, the Anthology of Fantastic Literature by Alberto Manguel, and I have enjoyed the majority of the stories I have read in this. I just never got around to finishing it. And my one complaint with this book is that it is kind of fragile, and I'm always a little bit wary that I'm going to break it. This has all kinds of really interesting stories in it, and if you ever see this, you should pick it up. It's really good. So the next book is one that I tried to read when I was in 9th grade, I think, and I just didn't make it through. This is the Blackstone Chronicles by John Saul, and this is a book of, I guess they are interconnected novellas about an abandoned asylum and the ghosts that are in that asylum, and some of the people in this town who have links to those ghosts, to the people who had been put in this asylum and mistreated and that sort of thing. I don't remember why I didn't make it very far into this. I was never a huge fan of John Saul's books. I read several of them, but I was really trying to like them rather than liking them, if that makes sense. I was about that age. After that, we have one by Frank Peretti. This is The Oath. All I know is that this is about a town that is like under an oath of some sort, and they break that oath and the monster comes out and eats them, or something of that nature. I don't know. It's some kind of evil. It sort of reminds me of a Ramsey Campbell novel. I cannot remember the name of it. I still have it. It's in there. I'm probably going to do a tour of my paperbacks also. And I am actually leaving the paperbacks on this shelf here for the last couple of videos, because it'll be a seamless transition into more paperbacks, I guess, if anyone's interested. I have to admit, these shelf tours have not been, people haven't found them particularly interesting, and that's just fine. But I've enjoyed making them. I've enjoyed getting all my books off the shelf and looking at them, even though I haven't really heard very much back, and that's okay. After that, we have an anthology of, I guess, postmodern style stories. This is After Yesterday's Crash, the Avant Pop Anthology, edited by Larry McCaffrey. There's a young guy there with I believe that's a mock-up of Sputnik, which was like the first satellite ever sent into space. It was sent up by the Soviets in the 50s. I don't know if I will. I am not a huge fan of like postmodern literature. Let me put it that way. So I don't know. That may be a book that goes back to the bookstore. After that, we have one. This is an anthology of like horror stories, but they are about more realistic predators. It's called Predators. So people who break into your house and do bad things to you and that sort of thing. And not my favorite genre, to be honest. I prefer to read horror stories about fantastic things and not realistic things. And let's see. Now here is a book by Douglas Reeman. This is Badge of Glory. This is, I think, the beginning of a trilogy, at least a trilogy. It is a multi-generational story of this family who has been involved in Britain's wars over the years. And I have all of them, as far as I know. And I have quite a few of these Douglas Reeman books, actually. I really like him as a writer. It's just been a while since I've read one of his books. And in fact, they are, I don't know if you can see the second line behind these front books, but most of my Douglas Reeman and Alexander Kent books are back there. Also some Tom Clancy books that I think I'm going to get rid of. But Alexander Kent and Douglas Reeman are the same person. So he also wrote these Midshipman Bolitho novels. Not entirely sure if that's how you pronounce that. And he wrote quite a lot of them. They are in the Horatio Hornblower tradition, the Aubrey Maturin tradition about a young man who becomes a captain on these ships in the British Navy, the Royal Navy. And after that, we have two plays. One is Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett. I used to have that big book. It's like a trilogy by Beckett, but I just realized that I was never going to read it, so I sold it. This is a play about two guys who are hanging out under a tree having a conversation, and I don't think the person they're waiting for ever arrives. So that's sort of in that, I don't know if that would fit into that postmodern sort of thing or into the existentialist thing. I have no idea. But I thought I would keep that and read it because it's relatively short. And the last book is Thornton Wilder's Our Town. So this is a play. They don't have any furniture on the stage or anything like that, so they just pretend to be interacting with whatever you may call them. My mind is not working with me well today. Whatever you call the items that actors interact with on stage. I wish I could remember. I'm sorry that I can't. So that brings us to the end of this shelf tour, or at least this particular shelf. So, like I said, I want to thank you very much for watching, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on these books, if you have them, if you've read them, if you want to read them, and I will see you next time.